Good evening and welcome to Romanov Ball Cosplay. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made my Ahsoka Tano headpiece. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So starting off here, I'm planning how I want to proportion my leku. In this video, I'm editing my original to see what types of shapes would look best. The biggest thing I struggled with this cosplay originally was proportions. While the shape of the headpiece looked really good, the proportions were that of Ahsoka's head and not mine, and it caused me to look oddly short. The most important thing to think about when making a Ahsoka headpiece or any Togruta headpiece is essentially imagine that you are a Togruta and you're making a headpiece that would fit you. One of the best ways you can determine the proportions is to measure the character's various features in comparison to yours. For example, the height of Ahsoka's monstrals is between her chin and her eyes. Once you translate the proportions from Ahsoka's head to yours, you should have a very accurate idea of what the proportions should be. So the materials you will need are newspaper, tinfoil, drywall joint compound, cardboard, contact cement, flour, Elmer's glue, 4-way stretch spandex, quick seal, and a baseball cap. So here I'm starting with the baseball cap. First, you're going to want to put on your wig cap, swim caps, and anything else you need, and then adjust it to your size. Next, you're going to want to cut off the brim. Once you've finished that, you're going to want to trace the shape onto some cardboard, cut it out, that way you can get a nice frame for your monstrals. After I had completed this, I traced out what I wanted the monstrals to look like. It took me a few tries to get the shape right, but once I was done, I cut it in two and then mirrored which side I felt looked best, so that way the headpiece is symmetrical. So here are all the cardboard guidelines for the monstrals. I also included the one on the back, and currently they are just taped on. Now I'm just securing it into place with more painter's tape. So now we start with the aluminum foil. This is one of the most crucial parts, obviously, of getting the monstrals the correct shape. I'm just cutting out pieces of aluminum foil, crumpling it up, and molding them into place. Now I'm doing this for a Season 7 headpiece. However, if you were to do something like a Rebels headpiece or God forbid a Shock T, you would probably want to make it hollow so it's not too heavy. And here it is complete. Now I'm just securing it with more painter's tape. This will make it a lot smoother and also keep it all together. And here it is with a small layer of paper mache. I didn't add that much paper mache, but I basically just used a mixture of flour and water with a tiny bit of Elmer's glue, and it turned out quite nice. Now I'm just measuring out the width I need for the leku. Taking a 4-way stretch spandex, I mark out the measurements for the leku and I cut them out. One of the most important things you need to remember when making leku is to include the part that sits on your shoulder. This will make the monstral building process so much easier since you don't have to worry about that curved shape. Also, since the fact that that part will be made of fabric, you can turn your head much easier and will give you a lot better mobility. I stitched both pieces together using a zigzag stitch and then stuffed them, and I made sure I added sewing beads at the bottom so that way they are nice and flimsy. I glued the leku to the headpiece using contact cement. Now I am using the drywall joint compound to make the top smooth. As you can see, the leku curled at the tops after I glued them on. Try to avoid this, that will make the smoothing out process much easier. So here I'm just adding on the drywall joint compound. I used a rubber spatula to get a nice smooth finish. It took me about 3 hours to do everything you're seeing here, and you definitely have to be patient with it. It's probably the most important part of it though. I want to quickly give a shout out to an amazing channel that taught me a lot of these great methods that are really useful in cosplay, Ultimate Paper Mache. Now I'm taking a damp towel and sanding it. Drywall joint compound is not waterproof, so you can sand it with just a damp towel. And I'm using DAP Quick Seal to smooth out any of the edges around where the leku connect to the monstrals and any cracks and imperfections. Now time for painting. I went over everything with a layer of house paint, which I'd only recommend doing for the montrals because you really need to have a good primer on the montrals, especially since drywall joint compound, again, is not waterproof. And because I used the house paint on the leku became rather stiff. Since I had used a very warm tone house paint, I decided to go over it with a white airbrush. This gives it a very lifelike appeal, and then I used chalk to mark out where the stripes should go. Now I'm using multiple different colors of blue acrylic paint to mark in the stripes.